Here are your hosts, Imran Poladi, Tim Big Chef Scheffler, and Kevin Michael Whitey Gleason. Holy cow! Yeah. Saturday morning, finally here. That means it's time for the True Sports Card Show. I'm Whitey Gleason. On today's episode, we'll let you know how you can be a part of a huge night at the shop tonight. Zack Bayrouty, voice of the Rivercats, going to tell you which major and minor leaguers to keep an eye on here in Sacramento this season. And we'll examine what Wemby's medical condition might mean for those who collect his cards. And now here he is, Mr. True Sports Cards himself, the man who, for some reason, asked me to grab a soda and popcorn for him since I was going to the concession stand last night and handed me $160 for it, even though they don't take cash at the concession stands. Imran Poladi!
What an intro. Every intro is like a little known fact intro.
Yeah.
That's unnecessary for you to share with other people. What was that about? So we went to the game last night. You had drive guys with you and Kyle.
Yes.
From the stadium. I said, "Hey Whitey, I have better seats than you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be there.
Flex.
I have an extra seat.
Flex.
Come and join me." And he said, "Sounds great." So I'm there with my skinny jeans because I'm trying to look impressive, and I have my money in my front pockets. And you decided to get up because obviously
I had to meet a friend of mine, Lonnie Nielsen. So I was like, I'm going to get up and say hi. And you say, hey, can you get me something? Like, okay.
Right, yeah. Please. I said, please.
Also. Here's $160 for popcorn and a Coke.
Golden one's expensive, man. I didn't know. And so what he does is he brings back the diet, the Coke Zero.
Coke Zero.
And the bucket of popcorn. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it very much. Didn't have to get up myself. And he hands me back change, $20. I know I gave him $160. I go, what is going on here? Kyle, you're looking at me like, yeah, right? This is expensive stuff.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. Do they even take cash at Golden One?
They do not.
No.
They do not.
No, but you know who does take cash? Whitey Gleason. As in, he returns 20 of the 140. So he did pay for it with you. Did they?
Well,
did you bring out your wooden credit card? Or you said, do you have the carbon copy thing that we could...
Yeah, they don't have that anymore. But I just had your money somewhere else in a different pocket. So, yeah, he got his money back. And he got his popcorn.
At the beginning of the fourth quarter.
And he got his Coke Zero. And yet he still finds a way to complain about it.
Okay, so I think in a world, let's just put the $160 aside. Under normal circumstances, yes, Whitey should give you back the change that you
of course.
You gave him. But you gave him $160 for no reason. Maybe he's inferring that you're just, just give me back whatever you want. Keep the change, maybe.
He went at the end of the first quarter. He sat next to me for the next two quarters, gave me finally my money back middle of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I found it. I felt like that should probably.
Well, what is he supposed to do with $160? That's an unreasonable amount of money to give anyone.
And you know what's crazy? After I ate I ate the pizza, which had 6 slices of pepperoni on the pizza. I ate the popcorn and I had 2 of the sodas. After, I still went to Sauced on the way out. Like, I could go home and eat healthy foods or any of that stuff. Nope. I'm going to go to Sauced outside, eat by myself while Whitey's in the media room or whatever he was doing.
Yeah.
And that's my life.
Yeah. It was fun. That was a highlight of the night, obviously, if you're a Kings fan. It was a rough night.
That was a rough night.
Rough night at the Golden One.
Yeah, that was a rough night.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a wonderful guest.
Yes, we do.
He's sitting, he's waiting patiently. Like, did I drive all this way to hear about Imran's therapy session?
Don't oversell.
Yeah. Drove all this way. Our friend Zack Bayrouty is here.
Nice.
Zack is the voice of the Rivercats. He's voice of the Pacific Men's Tigers basketball team.
Request, could you just give us here's a 2-1 pitch and it's down low.
Here's the 2-1 outside.
There you go. Yeah.
That's a
3-1.
That's Bob Euchre
Nice.
if I've never heard it one before. Yeah. So Zack and I have gone back as friends for a long time. His wife and my wife are best friends. And we were I think Jessica was a bridesmaid at your wedding. And then Megan was the maid of honor at our wedding. He has 2 wonderful, beautiful children. One of them by the name of Brock, who's almost the same age as Beckett. So the 2 of them are just kind of together and hanging out.
Brock Bayrouty? That's a ball player's name right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's tough to find a name to match the last name, first name to match the last name. So Brock just kind of flowed. We went with it.
Number 17, shortstop, Brock Bayrouty.
Swinging from the left side, too.
Yeah.
Is he a lefty?
Yeah, okay.
I think he's a natural righty, but I got him swinging from the left side.
That makes sense. That's why you had his hand tied behind his back. It's like, no, you're going to be a lefty. We need you to play first. So, yeah, Zack is here, and I asked him if he could come join us because he knows all things baseball particularly with the River Cats going into the Giants big league team, and being the voice of the River Cats and seeing the changes that are happening now that we're going to have the don't call us Sacramento A's here in town. I thought this was a perfect time, knowing that spring training has been going on right now. The spring games are going on right now. We're excited about that. So I asked Zach, could you come on and talk about some of the prospects or some of the exciting things coming up? Whitey, you're a big time baseball guy. I'll let you guys have this conversation. I'll jump in when I feel like it, which is probably often, but I was hoping that you guys have the conversation in regards to this. Let's start with the changes that are happening at the ballpark. I know that you guys were going over it before the pre-show. Yeah. I'd love to know what some of the changes are looking like in the ballpark.
Yeah. Could I ask you, Zach, too, kind of dovetailing of that, how rare is it for this city, Sacramento, to have AAA and Major League Baseball in the same city at the same time?
It's pretty crazy. It's unprecedented. Whitey, you talked about Buffalo hosting the Blue Jays in 2020, and that's at their AAA ballpark, but that was the season of the COVID season where they weren't playing AAA baseball. So you have the precedent where you've had a AAA ballpark host Major League Baseball, but never at the same time had baseball gone on. So it's really, really rare. There are certain things that are going to be a little bit different for the River Cats this year. They haven't really adjusted our schedule much. There's 1 week where we were supposed to host Tacoma. They're sending us to Tacoma in June so they could resod the field a little bit because they went away from their original plan, which was to have the artificial turf. The Players Union nixed it for good reason. I mean, it's going to get really hot down there. So they're sending us on the road for an extra week. That's really the only schedule change. We're going to have to leave town a lot on Sunday night because we play day games Sundays, whereas normally we'd travel Monday, but just easier to kind of get us out of town Sunday night. So the bus situation doesn't get screwy back there. So a couple wrinkles that are going to be different, but I think they've done a great job logistically, at least on the surface, trying to get both teams in there, have both teams play without it being too much of a disruption for either side.
To Imran's point, what do you think fans who've been going to a lot of River Cat games are going to notice right away about the ballpark first time they see the new ballpark?
It's going to look like a Major League ballpark in terms of like the video boards and now the dugouts, and you're going to see a brand new clubhouse that's tucked inside the left field line. The capacity is going to be the same. It's 14,014. They might add a smattering of seats, I think, near where they're building the Major League clubhouse out in left field, but I mean, you're going to have an intimate ballpark with all the bells and whistles of a Major League ballpark. And so for the River Cats, I mean, the residual effects are going to be awesome with hosting Major League Baseball. For me, selfishly, the booth is going to be pretty nice. They're going to have Major League caliber booths, and they've
padding in the seats.
What's that?
Padding in the seats.
Yeah, padding in the seats in the press box. Yeah. I'll get a nice chair, hopefully.
But you've done Major League Baseball before.
Just one game.
Yeah, okay.
I filled in for the A's one game. Yeah. So,
who's pitching?
Who was pitching
that game?
It was Mike Fires. Because I made the mistake. I'll never forget it because I made the mistake of, one of my things is, if a pitcher throws, so-and-so fires. And so I was just was like, fires. And it just came out. And I was like, damn it. Of course I would do that.
Which is this is what's understandable with one game. Your fires from doing this
it's like my first inning of Major League Baseball, and I'm like, well, there's that.
there's always 10 years from now. I'm hoping that they get their concessions under wraps, truly, because it was very difficult going there. We sat on the grass, myself, Jessica, and Beckett. We went to a game. We sat in the little grassy area there, and Jessica's like, I'll just go grab a hot dog for us or whatever it was, because Beckett's getting a little hungry.
And you gave her $160.
I gave her $160. She came back. She never came back. I had to find her at the house. Yeah. She was eating a pizza at home. No,
you can buy an Uber home with that amount of money.
She was gone.
She went over to Sauce.
She went to Sauce, ate by herself. But yeah, truly, she was gone for like 45 to 50 minutes, and I was like, "Where have you been?" She goes, "This line has been horrible." And that was the game that the Giants exhibition against the River Cats.
Oh yeah, well that's always a tough one because that's the first big event there of the year, and so they're still trying to iron out some things. But there's actually a new concessions company that's taken over. It's the same company that the Kings use, I believe. So we'll see how that streamlines. Things.
Let's hope they put more pepperonis in their pizza. Literally, I was looking and I was going, "Where's the pepperoni on this pepperoni pizza?" And
I'll let them know.
Whitey goes, "Look at the side, look at the edge," and there was like a half a slice there. So
I'll let them know to not be cheap with the pepperoni.
whatever you could do.
Yeah, you got it. You're talking to the right
listen,
guy.
Yeah,
Some people find things to complain about no matter what, so I don't.
If you want your $140 tip,
I'm a Kings fan.
I'll tell you what. How about I have a fridge in my booth? I'll buy a packet of pepperoni for you, and then if it's not sufficient, you could just come up to the booth, throw some pepperoni
Get some
on.
bonus
the
pepperoni.
answer is it's always never sufficient enough. Okay, so we've got players that are coming through the system. Players both on the A side, on the Major League and AAA side, as well as obviously everybody in the chat right now on YouTube. If you want to check it out on Sacktown Sports 1140, they're talking about Bryce.
Mhm.
But before we get started, this past week has been an embarrassing week for me.
Really?
People at the shop have called me dummy, dodo, idiot, because last show I talked about how are the River Cats? No, I think the River Cats feed to the Rockies, or I said something like that.
Yeah, and see, I tried to show you on my phone so I didn't have to say anything, so you would see it and
Right.
realize.
But I ignored it. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, your phone is the smallest phone I've ever seen in
It is a
life.
little, yeah. It's a
Yeah,
Is it
mini.
smaller than mine? My wife complained the other day.
Oh
that-
yeah,
It's a mini.
it's
Oh yeah, it is small. Wow.
font size, huh?
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
what the font size is. And so I go, no, I'm right. But I was dead wrong. Everybody corrected me on it. Zach was the voice of the Reno Aces prior to the River Cats, and the Aces fed to Rockies, or
No, Diamondbacks.
I still don't know what I'm talking
it's-
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reno, Arizona.
Who's the Rockies?
Albuquerque.
That's what and I was in Albuquerque a few weeks.
There you go.
That's what it was.
All ties in.
Which now all makes sense.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
There you go. That's me. That's me talking
if
about the
Zach
Rockies.
wasn't sorry he came in here before, right now.
Today
he's
is
like,
it right? Woo! He's like, when is this segment over?
you brought him in here for his expertise, and you're just like, so where do these teams go now?
We can edit this out in post. All right, so Zach, let's talk about your home team that you cover every day,
Yeah.
the River Cats. There's some exciting names that are going through there right now. I'd mentioned Reggie Crawford. I'd mentioned Bryce Eldridge, and then you brought up
Carson Whisenhunt.
Carson
Their
Whisenhunt.
top pitching prospect.
Yeah, great
As-
time changeup.
As our listeners are listening right now and thinking about who they should invest in and who might make the major league roster sooner than later, give us the highlights of these three particular players.
So we'll start with Bryce. I mean, he's a baby, right? He was drafted out of high school. He's this phenom, and he looks like a man-child. I met him for the first time. We were in Round Rock, which is just outside of Austin, and I was with our manager after a game, just hanging in the hotel lobby, and in walks this dude, and big beard, 6'7", backwards cab. I mean. And I'm like, is that the guy? Is that Bryce? And Brundy, our manager, Dave Brundage, looks at me. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, that's the kid. It's like, that's the kid. And I'm like, and so he walks in and comes over and introduces himself to us, and really, really put together, and just feels like he's older than he actually is. And boy, they love his swing. They love his swing. He's going to be a guy they try out at first base. He got his first AAA hit. Now the Giants gave him the option. They could shut him down. He was in AA, and it was the last week of the season. They're like, we could shut you down, or if you want to, dip your toes into AAA, you can go and do a little extra work. He's like, give me the extra work. I want to go. So to his credit, it's a grind of a baseball season. So he joined us, and not easy travel, having to come out to Round Rock, and then we came back, and he made his Sutter Health Park debut, which was really cool for the fans to be able to see him. But the swing is impressive. He looks the part. He's wise beyond his years, and I'm looking forward to seeing him this year. I think he will start in SAC, depending on how spring goes, but I would say he's probably going to start in Sacramento.
How's his on-base stuff?
On base percentage,
Yeah,
really
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Great plate discipline. He's not up there hacking. The plate discipline was really good considering how young he is.
Wow.
And I'll tell you, when he made the first bit of contact he made was a foul ball, fouled one off, and I was like, that's a big league foul ball right there. It sounds silly, but when you see it, you just kind of know. It's like, wow, this kid,
The level of contact
6'7" with the leverage, and he got to work with Damon Minor last year, who's a big guy, tiny, for those who know him, and just a lot of long levers there at play. And so working with Damon, I think for that week really helped him, and it's gonna I think make him a lot more ready for what's awaiting him in spring.
So he's considered one of the brighter prospects in all
of baseball.
Right?
Yeah, you can make the argument he's top 5 in all of baseball in terms of
Wow.
prospect status.
Most recently, his card sales on February 12th. I'm going with the, it looks like this is going to be the 24 Bowman Paper Prospect Auto PSA 10, sold on February 12th for $113. And that's really strong considering that's just a paper product, not even a chrome product. Most recently, as of yesterday, there was a Bowman Sapphire Autograph Orange numbered to 25 PSA 10 sold for $749 yesterday. So people are on the Bryce train, and you're telling us that Giants fans, get ready. This kid's going to see the major leagues this year, you believe?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I don't know about this year. And the reason I say that is because the regime change. I think under Farhan, he probably would have gone up this year. I think Farhan was very aggressive, for better or for worse, promoting some of these high level prospects. I don't know if Buster's gonna be a little more tame. I think a lot's gonna depend on how the major league team's doing. Like a lot of that's predicated on that. But it's gonna be interesting to see how Buster kind of goes. If he goes more old school and says, you know what, let's keep the kid here in AAA. Let him either dominate the league, let him struggle for a time, let him do both. And I wouldn't disagree with that philosophy if they go that way.
The next name that I would be thinking about is Reggie Crawford. That's a name that's been coming about the last couple of years. Tell us about Reggie.
Yeah, big time arm, two-way player, and he was injured midway through last season, so we really didn't get to see him much. But a guy who was a two-way player, I believe, coming out of UConn, and just great arm talent. And when you have a guy that can chuck it that hard from the left side, you're always going to be intrigued. And so the Giants, I think, were toying with the two-way idea with him, but then they wanted to just put him on the bump and let him develop that way. And he got injured midway through last season. I believe he had to go have surgery. So this is going to be a rebound year for him. I'm not sure what his timeline is, to be honest, but big time arm, big time lefty out of the bullpen. And if he can put it all together, the Giants have something.
It's just amazing. I know this is nothing that anyone doesn't already know, but just as we're talking about Giant prospects, I'm reminded of some of the big prospects they've had in recent years, and it's just so difficult. The game is so difficult. Like Marco Luciano was like, oh, watch this kid. And now, he's struggling to find a position. And, Elliot Ramos found his way a little bit, but he was supposed to be a huge prospect. Joey Bart, of course. My point isn't to, disparage these players, but just to underscore how nobody knows and how difficult this whole really is.
Well, the development for the Giants has been different. I mean, I remember watching the Giants of the late 2000s in San Jose in the early 2010s, and those were teams that blossomed into the dynasty, into the three world championship teams. But in the case of Marco, I mean, really interesting case study in development because all the tools were there. They were super into those tools. And they got him up quickly. He barely had a cup of tea in AAA, and then they threw him up to the major league level, and that's a whole. I mean, no pun intended. It's a whole different ball game up there in terms of being under the microscope. I mean, Marco, and I'm not meaning to pile on him. I mean, he's a good kid. He literally cost him a game last year with an error. He booted a double play ball in Pittsburgh, I believe it was, and so you get up there and you put. That player who's still really young and maybe not quite as seasoned as he needs to be under that microscope. And you wonder how that affected him all of last year. He boots a double play ball, costs the big league team a game, gets sent back down to AAA, and all of a sudden he's got no confidence. He's playing a middle infield position, which you can't play that position and be lacking confidence. And his swing suffered because of it. I mean, he had a bad power outage last year. And Marco even said, I think in a recent article, at times he felt lost at the plate. And that's why you wonder in a case like Bryce Eldridge, do you want to season him more or do you want to get him up there and roll the dice and maybe it screws him up a little bit if it goes sideways?
That's not exclusive to just baseball. If you think about some of the young quarterbacks get thrown into the fire too early or even somewhat veteran type players, he's gone now. I'll talk about him out loud, but ever since that 3-point shooting contest with Kevin Herter, we saw a real decline in his accuracy from the 3-point line, as well as confidence. Sometimes we forget they're 6'7", as you said, backwards hat, big burly dude. He's 21. I remember how insecure I was at 21. I'm insecure at 47, as we've learned earlier in the show. But just these are young men who can be easily influenced in a way psychologically that can really throw them off. And the game of the scrutiny and people screaming at you from the stadium seats, it's a unique situation that not all of us can understand.
Yeah, Imran, I remember talking to Barry Zito about that once and asking him about the importance of confidence. And his tone was kind of like I was an idiot. It's like, oh, confidence is everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Especially when you throw 67 miles an hour.
In the case of the NFL, the quarterbacks, right? I think NFL teams have to make that business decision where, I mean, you have your guy that you drafted. You got to figure out, because of the economics of the game. If you're going to give this guy a boatload of money, I think the advantage that Major League Development people have is that you don't have to make those big financial commitments early on. So, which is why it was so vexing the Giants decided to rush a lot of these guys up. It's like, you can let them develop. And I know you want to win at the major league level, but maybe pick your spot. Like, were the Giants ever going to win a World Series the last couple of years? I don't think so. I mean, they had that 21 season, which was magical, but it's like, pick your spot. Like, do you want to get them up now? And why roll the dice when you can leave them at AAA and let them come up when they're ready?
Well, then Joey Bart found his swing a little bit with the Pirates, didn't he?
He did. And I think, I'll die on the hill, like, where the Giants screwed up the development there. And partly it was a weird situation because it was COVID and, Buster opted out, and all of a sudden the kid has to go up and be Buster. It's not like he's taking the shoes of someone that's not a future Hall of Famer. But Joey's a really good dude. He's a ballpark rat, and he got, I don't want to say he got exposed up there, but I just don't, it always seemed contentious with him, like between him and Kapler and Farhan, and they were always talking about X, Y, and Z. And it's like, you're asking a lot of the kid, and he hasn't really even played at AAA. So, he was the number 2 overall pick.
And Bailey was doing pretty well as well at that time. So it's like,
Well, Bailey was coming up behind him. And the other element here is that Bart was not a Farhan draftee, Bailey,
as Kyle Draper would say, not my guy. Not my guy.
Yep, and that plays in sometimes.
Peg Junk says the Giants have a trend of letting young talent rot on the vine in AAA. I just want them to bring up guys that can play, because iron sharpens iron is what Peg Junk says. Let's talk about the major league team. We've got Buster there, which I'm such a big Buster Posey fan. I've loved him for years. I think, Zach, you may know that I was there during his major league debut. He came out, I believe it was September 11th, and his first year, I think it was 2011, I believe it was. I was there in the crowd. I remember going to the game. He played against the Cardinals, and Gerald Posey was just out there doing his thing, and I just fell in love with the way he played and how hard he played. And I'm always nervous when they go into the front office, because front office always ends ugly, no matter what it is. If it's 1 year or 20 years from now, it never ends nicely. Even your Boston Red Sox.
Oh, the Red Sox. I was going to say the Red Sox are the poster child for nobody ever has a happy exit from there.
Nobody has a happy exit.
True Boston fashion.
When you think of the heroes, local heroes like Vlade, like Peja, like now Buster, who have come into the front office, you're hoping that they do well, because you don't want the thought process of their legacy tainted because they made some bad mistakes. So here's Posey. One of his big signings now is Verlander. What are your thoughts about bringing an aging Verlander, but still Verlander, into the mix?
It's a great signing. Great. I was talking to my buddy Nick about this last night. A big Giants fan. To bring a guy like that with that kind of pedigree into an organization where you have budding talent on the pitching side. You talk about iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a guy here that not only is going to set a bar for those young pitchers, but he's going to be in the bullpen with them and showing them the tricks of the trade and things that they're going to learn through osmosis like that you just can't get anywhere else. I mean, but from a guy like a Justin Verlander. So
what's our starting 5 look like?
Way to put me on the spot.
No. Maybe not in order, but
I don't know. Can I cheat?
Well, we know
said Webb's going to be the opening day starter.
Yeah,
I think
Webb, obviously.
That.
I'm going to take a look.
Gerald,
Verlander, Kyle Harrison.
That's what I was saying.
Hayden Birdsong's going to be an interesting one to watch. He got two appearances with the River Cats before they had to get him up because of injury to the big leagues. But a guy that has, talk about arm talent. I mean, he's got it in spades, but as far as developmentally, did he get enough time at AAA? I don't know. And that's it. You can go into a huge philosophical debate about what's enough time at AAA, but I think the more time, the better. That's just me as an old school baseball guy. But nowadays people poo-poo the AAA level and they're like, oh, it's just veterans and 4A guys. It's like, well, no. Like, these guys are the best of the best. They've played all over the world. And you can't tell me that for a pitcher to not go through at least half a season facing these hitters, it's going to benefit them in some big way.
I know you know better than I do because you live it. But, yeah, it's amazing how AA at some point in the last 20 years, whatever, became the new AAA.
Yeah.
But, Imran, to your point about Buster, 2009 is when he made his debut. And I mentioned that because he was 2 for 17. 2009. Then the next year when they win the first World Series, he came up, he had 305. 2011 is when he had that terrible injury, and he came back the next year, 2012. They win the World Series again, and he had 336. Yeah.
Hall of Famer?
Nope.
Oh, I think he's Hall of Famer barely, just because of not cumulative stats, but dominant as a catcher for the years.
This
Hall
is
of
a
Famer?
this is a fun one. I kick this around with scouts all the time in the press box. We kick around these types of baseball questions. I think so.
If Maurer gets in, I think Maurer's in. So
Mhm.
I think Buster's in with an MVP. Absolutely. I think he's in.
3-time world champion.
Three-time world champion. Yep,
Mhm.
exactly. The other thing, if again, this is a sports card show, so people look for the investment aspect of things. Of the Giants this year, who do you think is going to have a really great year that maybe they could put some thought into investing?
The big league Giants
Yeah.
or the AAA Giants?
Big league.
I mean, Kyle Harrison is set
Good
to
call.
hopefully have a breakout
Yeah.
year. You know, and it was refreshing to hear Buster. There was an Athletic piece a couple of days ago came out. I was reading. He talked about wanting to extend the pitchers at the AAA level, so where they're working innings that are like legit innings, and we didn't see that with Kyle Harrison 2 years ago when he was with the River Cats. It was maddening. It was like 3 innings and done, 3 innings and done, and then it was like, oh man, stop the presses. He's going 4 today, you know. And just even internally, I know there was a little bit of angst. Like they wanted to keep pushing him, but that wasn't what the regime wanted at the time. So I'm very interested and intrigued to see what Kyle Harrison's going to do this year, given the limited number of innings he had at AAA. And, you know, then he got to the big leagues. It makes sense. They asked him to go pitch the 7th inning. I think it was against the Reds, or like go 3rd time through the order against the Reds. It was his Oracle debut, and he'd never done that at AAA. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see Harrison and how he progresses this year.
Just historically, pitchers don't get the love that other position players get in the card market. So as an example, January 31st, there was a Kyle Harrison 2023 Bowman Chrome first prospect on card autograph PSA 10 sold for $51. So if you love your Kyle Harrison opportunities, it's an affordable option. It's a great option. And there are more expensive cards. February 11th, there was a number to 50 gold shimmer auto Kyle Harrison PSA 10 sold for $430. So if you have the taste for more expensive version of that card, you can go $420 and buy a card for Kyle, or you can spend as little as $50 or $40 to get an autograph.
Imran, I would suggest that people in this area perhaps have an advantage over investors around the country because you're more familiar with Kyle Harrison and his potential. You know, you look at Paul Skeens and everybody in the country is like, oh, this guy's great. And, you know, values are through the roof. Kyle Harrison, I don't know if he's going to be Paul Skeens, but he has a chance to be a really great pitcher. And it's possible that a lot of people around the country just aren't aware of that yet.
Yeah, those front end of the rotation guys, they don't grow on trees, especially lefties and then a local guy.
Yeah,
it's a special story. But you want me to give you a position player too?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Elliot Ramos, you can't go wrong. He made the All-Star team last year. I think Luis Matos still hasn't hit his ceiling. And then kind of 2 dark horses, Grant McCray, who made his debut last year. And I'm a big Fitzy guy. I love Tyler Fitzgerald. Love Tyler Fitzgerald. And he's kind of a Swiss Army knife type player, which can be, you know, if you're a scout, it can be a detriment from a scout standpoint. It's like, oh, you slap the utility label on him and the value goes down, you know, but I think he fancies himself, Fitzy does, as an everyday shortstop. And I don't know if that's going to be where he plays, but he can play literally anywhere and he's going to swing it. And he's got a great attitude, a great team guy. And I think he's got all the makings and unbelievable speed.
Zach,
Game-changing speed.
Pardon me, Zack Bayrouty is with us, voice of the River Cats. Some of those utility guys, well, it used to be a utility guy's like a lesser guy that you plug in when you need him. But now it's almost like we have positionless baseball, like we have embraced positionless basketball. And some of those guys are even more valuable than they used to be.
They are. And I think the funny thing is, and I get into it with scouts all the time about this, I'm like, well, the teams want to sign guys that can play anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Because it gives them a lot more versatility. I mean, a guy like a Fitzgerald or a Brett Wisely who can play literally anywhere you put him on the diamond, it gives the team that versatility. So teams have gotten to the point where they're developing guys to play multiple positions, but scouts look at that as a detriment still. So there's kind of a weird clash between the scouting world and the economics of the game and what's happening. And it's really, really interesting for me. Every day I get to go in. One of the best parts of my job is I get to have these conversations with high level baseball scouts about, you know, this and that. And that's one of the debates we get into is, well, how can you give Tyler Fitzgerald this demerit for doing everything well and still swinging it? You know, I don't get it.
You can be the Padres and just draft shortstops and put one in center field and one at third base and one at right field. And then, one at shortstop.
He's a disgruntled Padres fan if you haven't noticed that yet.
Sorry about it. Yeah.
There's two of them
there's
on
some
this
good
show
years
also.
coming for you guys though.
stockpile
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
You come out and see El Paso at all when they're in Sac?
I haven't, but I know the Ethan Salas and what is it, DeVries? They've got some real hot prospects.
Yeah, we had
Hopefully.
Tati here a couple years ago for
Yeah.
opening day. He was rehabbing from his suspension.
Yeah, from his ringworm.
From the ringworm, absolutely. So what you're saying is find the Jose Oquendo. Is that his name? Jose
Yeah,
Oquendo.
yeah.
He played all
a
9
good pull right
positions
there.
in one game.
Hmm.
I think he was trying to do something. I don't think that was by
Right,
accident.
right.
Yeah, I
That's
think
kind
he
of a
did on
stunt.
purpose.
Yeah, they do that on purpose.
Look-
We had a
Yeah.
guy at the Stockton Ports, Melvin Mercedes, did that a bunch of years back. It was kind of fun.
I used to watch the
It's a fun
Stockton Ports,
scorecard.
obviously in my hometown. Bo Dodson was my guy. You were too young for that, but Bo
Yeah.
Dodson we thought was going to be. But I saw Cal Eldridge pitch. Cal Eldred. I watched Listash.
Oh, yeah.
Li-
Rookie of the year,
Pat
if I'm not
Listash.
mistaken.
John Jaha came through there.
Greg Vaughn.
Greg Vaughn, yes, 1990.
Vaughnie.
Vaughn,
Local guy.
yeah. They're not your normal team that you follow, but you know your baseball. Tell us about the Don't Call Us Sacramento A's. Who should we be paying attention
Can we
to?
just call them the Sacramento A's?
We can. We'll do whatever
The
we
San
want.
Francisco Chronicle says we're calling them the Sacramento A's.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Okay,
Yeah.
so for the Sacramento A's,
Yeah.
who should we be paying attention to in the hobby, based on field performance?
So a couple of guys. So Lawrence Butler
Yeah.
is the big phenom for them, and he's a guy that you're going to want to watch this year. I mean, the A's are
He's
talking
exciting.
about signing him to a long term. Which, by the way, it's funny. The A's are signing these guys now, and I'm not going to get into that. But you know,
we described it as the movie Major League, where the evil owner didn't want them to win, and she kept trying to make them lose, just so they could relocate the team. It feels like it just happened.
you know what's funny though about the A's, or maybe not funny if you're an A's fan. I worked for the Stockton Ports for 14 years, so I was part of that org for 14 years. My one major league game I did was filling in for Ken, you know, and it was unbelievable. So I always have a really special place in my heart for the A's. They've had some dudes. I mean, despite the fact that they haven't signed these big long-term deals, like the baseball side, David Forrest and company, they've signed and drafted really well over the last 10 plus years. And they could have had super teams if they elected to sign the likes of, you know, Matt Olson and those guys,
Mhm.
you know,
Even
and
Simeon, who wanted to stay.
Marcus Simeon, who made all the sense in the world. Like,
Yeah,
why wouldn't you
yeah.
sign this guy, you know, and Sean Murphy
it
and the
goes all
like.
the way back to Reddick, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like you had some real players
Yeah.
on this team.
But they've, you know,
Chapman.
they had to operate for those years knowing that Oakland might not be a long-term solution. And, you know, that came to pass. But I think the I don't want to call it the stinginess of the organization, but their unwillingness to sign these big
Frugality.
the frugality kind of flies in the face of like the great job that the baseball side has done in acquiring talent. So now I think they're ready to commit to some of these guys, and Lawrence Butler would be one of those guys. You're talking about long-term deal. And Zach Geloff, I saw him in his first AAA action maybe 2 years ago. It's funny. He went from Stockton to Vegas to fill in, like just a cup of coffee. He was still in low A. And I'm like, who the hell's this kid? You know, we were down in Vegas and he's just roping the ball. And he had like 4 something in that series. I was with Reno at the time. I'm like, this kid's legit. And it did not surprise me one bit that he's had the success.
So
that he's
Strikes
had.
out a little bit.
He does, but you're going to get that. And you can't, you know, to be a baseball fan this day and age, you kind of have to, you know, you can talk about it, but that's
He did clarify the name though. It's Geloff.
Zach
Yeah.
Geloff. Yeah.
Okay, we've heard everything from Geloff to
Yeah.
Geloff.
I tried to tell him it was Geloff, and
Yeah.
he wouldn't listen to me until you said it.
Oh,
So-
yeah. Have you,
Because your phone screen
Imran,
is
have
too
you
tiny.
heard that it's this and that, or have you just insisted that it's like Geloff?
Here's what I say. Do you want this card or not? Okay, Geloff, just buy it already.
You know what card I want? The one you just showed me.
Yeah.
Can I have it?
Oh, the one that I just showed you, it's already sold. We'll talk about that in a few. Just to go back to Lawrence Butler, his most recent purple speckle refractor autograph, number to 299 PSA 10, sold February 20th for $161. The way that he plays, I've watched a little bit of the A's. The station has been home of the A's for the last year, and listening and watching him, a lot of Ellie De La Cruz in him, a lot of flashy, a lot of like go get it. He's a spectacular player. I really enjoy him, and I think that there's so much more to the interest in the hobby for those that have some sizzle to them on top of their stats. I think he's one of those guys.
He just
that
had a
has sizzle.
great second half last year.
He did, yeah, breakout second half. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how those guys, especially the young kids like the Geloffs and the Butlers, how they adapt. And I think they'll adapt pretty quickly to life in Sacramento at a minor league ballpark. You're talking about guys who have just played in these in this ballpark at Sutter Health Park. They played as a visiting team when they were coming up with Vegas. And I think it's the real fun is going to come at the end of the season when if the A's make the playoffs, and allegedly they're not going to have playoff games there.
They've actually
will
talked
not.
about that. It seems like they're motivated by that.
But yeah, well, because how are you going to tell these kids, this is it's going to be a big home field for the A's. It's going to be a huge home field advantage. So how are you then going to tell this team of guys that probably want to play at their ballpark where they know they have an advantage and it's intimate and they played there as minor leaguers? You're going to take them out of there? It's just good. And I know the money talks, right? I mean, MLB is going to be like, we can't make enough money with the seating capacity, but it's going to be fascinating.
Where might they go to play?
They talk about SF. I don't know if the Giants would want that. You talk about, I don't know. Fresno.
I
really don't know.
I guess get to the playoffs first.
Yeah.
And what kind of in the AL West, what does that look like this year, in particular with the Rangers, Seattle, and who am I missing?
Angels.
Angels, yeah.
It's pretty wide open, man.
Yeah.
It's pretty wide open. The AL West is really anybody's division, I think.
I think Texas might rebound a little bit.
Yeah,
this year.
Texas is going to be the favorite, but I think it's wide open, and the A's are going to be a really fun dark horse to watch.
Can I ask him about two players? Real quick. Two guys. If someone asked me, hey, who's people who invest in on the A's other than people everybody's talking about, like Butler, what do you think of these two guys? To me, Soderstrom has just tremendous power that I think is going to translate.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen glimpses. I know positionally he's like first base catcher, but Soderstrom, I think, is a guy to keep an eye on. And then he just made his debut last year, but Jacob Wilson at short, I think, has a chance to be a real bust-out star.
He does. Jacob Wilson was awesome. I saw him in Vegas, and he could do it all. And he's got the pizzazz about him to play that shortstop position. I really like Jacob Wilson. And then, Soderstrom, you're talking about a local guy. He's, just from why can't I think of the name? It's like between Stockton and Modesto. I can't think of the town right now, the exact town.
Lodi?
No.
Linden?
Merced.
No, it's
too far.
not. It's like north of Merced. It's gonna bother me.
North Merced.
Is it
south of the place above North Merced.
not Delano? It's like it's more
Downey?
You're getting closer.
What, you know it, Kyle?
Well, I just looked it up.
What is it?
Turlock.
Turlock.
Yeah,
there it is.
yeah.
Sorry, Turlock.
Still
I'm
209.
I know it's 209. Yeah, so
Still
Turlock.
209.
Yeah, but a local product. And Whitey, to your point, I think he wants to play more first base. I think in talking to people, the catching position it can wear on you, and so I think long term he's looking at being first base. But a guy that can crank the ball for sure.
Yeah.
He looks the part.
Moonshots,
Dude's a unit. I didn't watch him in A-ball because I'd left it. It was AAA at the time, but I remember seeing his highlights when he was in Stockton. I'm like, wow, this kid just looks different than the rest, and him being a local product like a Kyle Harrison we talked about with the Giants. If you're a local card collector, a Soderstrom is going to be a good one.
I was going to say, Kyle Harrison's uncle comes in. He's a customer at our shop.
Really?
He brings in tons of Kyle Harrison stuff to sell us. So we're always flush with autographed Kyle Harrison items.
It's going to be good.
Cool.
It's going to be good stuff.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay, let's switch gears if you don't mind. So actually, there's something there on that paper you were supposed to read. I can't remember what it is there.
Something I'm supposed to read?
Did you see it?
A live read?
If it happens to be in your hands, I don't know. Don't know. Can I get some music, please? Some romantic music.
How did you want me to do this?
Sultry.
What? We'll edit this in post.
For all your sports card needs, fans, look no further than True Sports Cards and Collectible. Here's a pitch to Dunston and he fouls it off. Whether you're a new, returning, or current collector, we have all your collecting needs from the newest releases, hot singles, supplies, autographed memorabilia, and even grading and authentication services. Ground ball is short. Larry Boa has it, throws across the diamond for the out. Come by and see for yourself. You'll wonder why you ever went anywhere else. That's True Sports Card and Collectible. Visit us today, 6661 Stanford Ranch Road in Rockland. Here's Mark Race.
That is phenomenal.
To be able to pull that off.
By the way, does Harry's family get royalties from you for that?
And now his great grandson is with the A's, huh?
Yeah, Chris.
Yeah,
he's one of the A's broadcasters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's funny you drop Larry Boa. Can I give you a quick Larry Boa story? My first year in baseball, I was an intern in 2005 in Jupiter, Florida. I mean, just scared to death, my first job I was still in college and it was just an internship and I was working spring training that they host the Marlins and the Cardinals. And I was like in the media side. So I had to go, it was like 5 a.m. I had to get there. and MLB Network was going to set up shop and set up the shot, and I had to go get the talent. One of the guys was Larry Boa. And so
was he coaching at the time?
He was
no,
he just retired. Okay. I think he was gone over to the media side.
Sacramento guy, of course.
Yeah. And so you hear about it, he kind of had a temper, right? He was kind of a fiery guy. And I remember like going to this van, and the van opens up, and the last person I was expecting to see was Larry Boa. And there's Larry Boa just sitting there, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Larry Boa. And like, I hope he doesn't. It's like 5 a.m. He's got a coffee, and it's dark out. And I'm like, this is what a weird place for me to be. So every time I hear Larry Boa, I think of that van in
5
Jupiter,
a.m.
Florida,
van
at 5 a.m.
Okay,
pull.
So what a callback on that one. We were at the Kings game last night. It's been a rough go. Zach is he knows his sports, even basketball, because of his connection with the Pacific Tigers, which is, again, one of the highlights of my little sports lifetime was when Zach allowed me the honor of sitting next to him when he called the Gonzaga game in Gonzaga. I sat next to him, in between him and Adam Morrison, who is the color guy for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And, your sports, and we've got the Kings now with this mixed match team that's not really meshing together. On paper, they look amazing. In real life, it's been a real struggle. Whitey, you were going to go down to media.
I just thought, wow, that's going to be really depressing. I don't know if I want to.
Yeah. So you could have joined me at Sauce, but you went straight
That
home.
might have been more depressing. So.
Eating by myself at Sauce, big old ribs by myself at the bar top.
Just throwing axes after losing.
Crying. Can I have a glass of milk? Zach, what are your thoughts on this team, this kind of uniquely put together team? And I don't want to say this out loud because obviously Whitey talks about this with Kyle almost daily, but does Monty survive all this? Truly.
I don't know. I mean, who's really ultimately pulling the strings? Is it Monty?
Good question.
Is it Vivek? I mean, I just don't know. You look at the organization, and a discliner: I'm a Kings employee.
I was going to say you can't say as much as you probably want.
That's fine. I mean, I'm going to just say what everybody else knows, but it's a fascinating case study in the NBA in 2025. Is it the collection of guys, or is it the guy that's missing that can meld it all together? And was Mike Brown that guy? Did they pull the plug too soon? I don't know. It's just a fascinating case study all around. And, I travel with a basketball team, I travel with a D1 college hoops team, and I see day in and day out the ebbs and the flows, and, a team coming together, a team being pissed off at each other, a team loving each other. And it's just throughout the course of a long season, you're going to have that. And so were the Kings in the midst of one of those tough stretches, and they pulled the plug too soon when it could have just gone the other way. I don't know. It's really fascinating.
The fans on the online chat boards are saying, make some moves, Monty. Then he makes the moves, make the right moves, Monty. Like there's so many nuances into a shaping of a team that one wrong move could take you in a wrong direction. And, we've been watching the team just by our eyesight. What we see is a turnstile defense. It's been very difficult to watch. That we can score 130.
Isn't that the normal defense in the NBA these days?
Well, don't look bad. Don't get dunked on. Don't get, they'd rather play some matador defense than get shook. I mean, Wemby is going to forever be on highlight reels where Kyrie Irving shook him badly at the All-Star game. And I'd rather just let you score the 2 points and look terrible like that for highlight years to come. Think of Brandon Knight. Think about Brandon Knight getting dunked on by DeAndre Jordan. That thing's going to live on forever. You just think about some of these players. It's just they don't want to hurt their brand by actually trying in some cases. I'm not saying that's what's happening with the Kings, but boy, this defense is pretty atrocious.
Yeah, the maddening thing is, to Imran's point, they're not a good team defensively. There's certain combinations out there where you can look at and go, woo, that's going to be tough. So you've got that, and you've got to figure out how to, work around that. Playing more zone, or playing, as you well know, or trying to trap, which they've done some, but then they're turning the ball over 20-something times a game, which puts more pressure on that defense, and they're giving up layups in transition, so they're actually making it worse through some sloppy play.
Live ball turnovers. Those are killer. Yeah, those are just killer.
And that's like, you can't do that if this team's going to win. And then when they do it,
it's significantly affecting the card market in Sacramento. Nobody's really saying, can you give me this player? I would say that in the last 2 years, as far as rookies are concerned, it's been Keegan Murray. But even last night, you and I were discussing it. when you're down by 20 and Scott Moko's on a score of Keegan, and you literally it's like Murray.
Yeah.
Like it was depressing because nobody's enthusiastic about going from 22 down to 20 down based on a Keegan Murray layup or a 3.
Yeah.
And you could just feel the air being let out of this building. And the Warriors fans got louder. That's normal. It happens. Curry was just doing Curry things. Even though he only scored 20 last night, he was doing some Curry things. He shot a 3. Before it was maybe 10 feet out of his hands. He's already doing the winged eagle backwards, running back, and it's hitting. It's just we're watching a GOAT. We're watching an all-time great playing right now. I think some people are starting to appreciate that. But as far as the Kings are concerned, and as far as the card market, it's significantly depressed. Fox and Sabonis were the sellers of the card market. Sabonis's lunchbox play doesn't really inspire a lot of like, oh yeah, I got to get a Sabonis card. So we're kind of at this weird limbo right now as far as the collectability of cards for Kings. It's a tough position.
I think a big factor there. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. As you've pointed out many times, and as we know, rookie cards are really the big thing for any sport. The Kings have not drafted especially well over the last few years, and some they've traded picks. Devin Carter this year has struggled, so you haven't had over the last 10 years a lot of Kings rookies. Keegan was significant, but right now he's, looked like he was going to be something. Right now we're not sure. So I think that's one reason. And Sabonis's rookie card was, of course, not with the Kings. So yeah. I think it's been, and De'Aaron Fox is probably the last rookie the Kings had where everyone's like, man, that guy's going to be really good.
And before that, there was a double rookie card year 12 years ago that had some hype to it. Thomas Robinson was in that group. Remember good old Thomas Robinson, number 5 pick from Kansas. He had some real buzz coming into the league. Then Jimmer had some buzz. Yeah. But other than that, you're right. The Kings picks have been.
And those guys didn't produce. There was buzz, but then
I guess you'd say also even way back was DeMarcus. People were thrilled about DeMarcus. But then you got the Papagiannis's of the world. And it's like we've made some real fumbles.
So you guys are huge Kings fans. I mean, what's been the problem with this incubator, in Sacramento over the last decade? Like what's it been?
I think drafting not for the positions of I think I wish I had a real answer, but when you think about it, there's no rhyme or reason as to some of the stuff they're doing.
Like Tyreek Evans was supposed to be. I remember Tyreek. And
rookie of the year over Steph.
Rookie of the year,
over Steph. Yeah.
I think the answer you guys are coming to is it's not just one thing, right? Because they nailed Tyrese Halliburton, one of the best picks ever, and they made the decision to flip him for a ready-made All-Star. So it's been different things about why rookies haven't worked out.
The Bagley pick is a classic example.
Yeah.
At the time, it's like, well, that should be a good pick, and it wasn't.
I don't think anybody really felt that way over Luka.
Right.
I mean, Luka was dominating at 16 years old against grown men, and they were like, should we draft this kid? No, let's get the skinny kid from Duke. So there was some real bad decisions, and you could go, all right, that's fine. But if you think about that draft in particular, that 2018 draft, that was DeAndre Ayton first, Bagley was second, Luka was not even picked yet. I think was Luka third.
Luka was 3. Yeah. Jaren Jackson Jr. was 4.
Trae Young was 5. Trae Young was 5. Yeah. They made 2 mistakes. Trae Young was traded for Luka, right? Because Luka was drafted by the Hawks, and then they flipped him. So multiple teams made mistakes. But if you think about that draft from 1 to 7, all those guys have gone to the playoffs. Suns, Mavericks, Atlanta. We're the only dodo franchise that's still in the doldrums of the basements because of decisions that were made many years ago. You have DeMarcus Cousins, an absolute all-star, an all-NBA player, and then you have the number 11 pick or 10 pick, and then you pick Papa Giannis. Like what? And DeMarcus like, what's going on here? It was like Kirk Cousins getting Penix drafted right behind him.
A small market team has to draft well because you're limited in other ways you can bring in players, and they haven't, and it's not easy to do. It's easy for us to sit there and they draft somebody and he's not good. Well, you're stupid. It's not easy, but they have not had a lot of success as a small market team in the draft. And that's one reason why they're in this current situation.
Which, in their defense, they have drafted 2 All-NBA players in the last 8 years.
That just don't happen to be on the team
anymore. Yeah. De'Aaron made it on the team, and then Halliburton, who obviously did it with the Pacers.
So let's wrap up our show talking about an earth-shattering injury that happened for this week. When we say earth-shattering, I mean hobby-shaking scenario. Victor Wembanyama has been diagnosed with a blood clot in his shoulder. Kyle, can you give me more specifics on that, please, on that particular issue? Now, we know that Victor was going to be Defensive Player of the Year. It's pretty clear about that. He was doing almost 4 blocks per game. What was the exact injury reported, Kyle? He's pulling it up.
It's deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. And he came back from the All-Star break, and he said he was tired, wasn't feeling well. So the Spurs checked it out, and it was because he wasn't getting enough, the circulation, the oxygen. It's a blood clot, deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder.
Which Brian Windhorst was explaining. It's like basically he's going to take blood thinners for 4-5 months, and then hopefully it'll clear up, and then you can get back to basketball activity. But you can't really do a whole lot other than just like running on a treadmill for 4 months.
Our head athletic trainer at Pacific was talking about that the other day. He's like, I would never ever clear anyone to do anything, but like you said, Kyle, like getting on a treadmill, I would never clear anyone to do that on blood thinners.
This is a pretty significant shakeup in the entire hobby.
Because there's so many people with so much invested.
I've instructed my team to not purchase Wemby cards at the moment because we just don't know where it's going to land. We've seen some significant drops just in his card values have dropped anywhere from 20 to 40% just in the last 48 hours. And people are likening this to what happened with Chris Bosh. I don't know if it's that serious, but Chris Bosh had to retire medically for some period of time. He tried a small comeback behind it, but
there have been other players who've like Brandon Ingram. So we just don't know, but there have been, I think, more players who've recovered than there've been like Chris Bosh who's had to retire.
Asar Thompson also had it last year. The difference with Chris Bosh's is one of them was, I think, in his lungs.
Right.
And so the heat doctors just would not clear him to play.
Did they say which shoulder?
Right shoulder, I believe.
So his shooting shoulder as well. So now we're in a position to where we're like, well, what do we do? Because
and the main thing is obviously we all hope he's fine.
Right,
that's
absolutely.
The main thing.
Absolutely. I was going to tell a joke to somebody about, if he maybe took shots during the skills competition instead of just throwing the ball, maybe it would have, but that was a stupid joke. And I would never repeat that, even though I just did. What I was going to say is that often entire products are driven by a rookie class. When I talk about the year. So the 23-24 products, hoops, it doesn't matter what product it was Wemby driven. You're looking for one guy. You might like a little Scoot Henderson. You might like a little Brandon Miller, but that product was driven. All systems go on Wemby. When you have a guy go down like that, it can really ruin an entire product. Again, his health is most important, but
of course,
we're talking about a significant loss by a lot of people. And we don't know what's going to happen as far as what we can do as far as recovering for unopened product. An example of that, 2021, the football product, that had some great names in there. We've got Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance. And there's only one guy standing left, and it's Trevor Wilson. And is he really standing at this point? Like, that product tanked massively. So as you had said, Zach, you know this basketball scenario as well. What are your thoughts on this comeback of Wemby and how does De'Aaron Fox now adjust? Are they going to shut down? You think they're going to tank? What's your thought process on this?
I really have no idea. I mean, Wemby's going to get obviously the best of the best care, and Pop is there, and it's a much more, as far as its situation goes, the situation is so much more stable than so many other different areas, in the NBA. And so I think that's only going to play to Fox's advantage, moving forward, and then to Wemby's, however they want him to come back. And I think Pop's going to just have a good feel for how that's going to work for him.
Yeah. And then, Pop has his own issues, obviously, right now as well. But it was tough. I mean, I don't have that angst towards De'Aaron Fox that a lot of people in the area for some reason have.
I do.
Because I get it, but I'll just tell you, it was hard to see him. Was it Thursday when against the Suns? He was great in the fourth quarter, and it's going to be tough if the Kings struggle and he continues to do that. It's going to be tough for them this year without Wemby to make any noise, but he looks like he's pretty happy there.
I think after the trade, I was worried about them creeping up the standings to be that 11 through 8. I don't think that's going to happen now.
And they weren't playing well even before Wemby went down.
Right. I don't
So,
think that's
yeah.
going to happen now. So maybe they do own their pick. So I believe they may go down the tanking position. As we close out the show, Zach, thank you so much for making the trip out
thank
here.
you guys for having me.
When's opening day for you?
March 28th. The exhibition game, River Cats Giants, is on the 23rd. I believe it's the Sunday. I believe it's the 23rd at 5 p.m. You get tickets now for that. It's going to be a really cool event. And for a lot of folks here, it's going to be their first time being able to see the new look Sutter Health Park. So River Cats Giants exhibition on the 23rd, and then River Cats opening day on the 28th, Friday against Albuquerque, funny enough.
I heard that they drive their players to the, I think it's the New York Yankees, or is it the Rockies? I don't remember. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
The Rockies.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I know that for a fact. Zach, you're on X. What's the, how do they follow you?
At Zack Bayrouty.
I follow him.
Spell it.
I followed
Bayrouty.
Bayrouty. Zackbayrouty.
Just like it sounds.
Yep.
Just like it sounds.
Really original.
Whitey, you're gonna be there tonight for a trade night?
I'm working on. I'm negotiating. I'm in negotiations now.
I was supposed to bring, if you could get the card part song going, Kyle, on the way out of town here, or the card store.
Yeah.
There's the card store song.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us every Saturday. I will not be here next week. It's gonna be you and Shep.
Okay.
And if Zach's in the neighborhood, he could stop by too and do
Sure.
that too. So we're
never gonna see him again on
yeah,
this show.
he's like this. I regret it.
Come on now. I'll be here next week.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tonight at Trade Night, 6 to 9 at True Sports Cards. We'll see you then. Have a great Saturday. We'll see you next week.
With singles, boxes, and more. And if you're hungry, Chinese restaurant right next door to the card store. Talk about True Sports Card Store, yeah.